My parents got a summer cottage in Ocean City up around 90th Street, and it was wonderful back then. I mean, actually, the coastal highway was a little two-lane road, and the little side streets that went up to the beach were all sand. There were no paved roads at that point. And we had this wonderful little beach cottage. It was almost like the summer of '42 kind of scene. And my father was an avid water person, had been all his life. And he used he found an old surfboard somewhere there in town from one of the lifeguards or somebody. It was a huge board. It was like a 12-foot board. And my brother and I used to ride that. I knew at that point that this was something that I was going to always want to do. And of course, I went to college in California specifically because of that. And much to my parents' dismay, they were true blue Easterners and pretty conservative. And I'll never forget when I told my father I was going to go to California to go to school. He said, "California?" He said, "Where's that?" And then he said, "I know why you're going out there." He said, "You're going out there to chase girls and go surfing." Even though I loved California surfing, my heart was always on the East Coast. I mean, I could hardly wait to come back to Ocean City and after each semester and partake in surfing in Ocean City. And there was the camaraderie was totally different than it was in California. I mean, even in California in the 60s when I first went out there, I came very close to not partaking in it because it was hostile. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I surfed Huntington Pier, and it wasn't a crowded day. I mean, there were maybe 30 or 40 guys out, and the waves were maybe shoulder high, and and I was just learning to shoot the pier, and I was doing my best to try and do it. And I'll never forget these guys were screaming and yelling at me, "Get the hell out of here, you kook, you don't belong here," and this and that. And I thought, God, is this a sport that I really want to get involved in? It was not the camaraderie that I was looking for. I remember always looking forward to going back to Ocean City because number one, there was the number of surfers that were there during that time period were so limited, and we were all buddies, and it was a wonderful, happy camaraderie, and we all loved to surf together, and we all loved to party together, and it was fun. After my first year of college in California, and getting really involved in the sport, I decided, gosh, I'm going to try and make a couple dollars from this. And I bought 12 used surfboards out there in California, paid maybe anywhere from $15 to $45 a piece for them, and tied them on top of my car and drove east with them and set up my little business at 15th Street on the beach. The townsfolk and the property owners in that part of town didn't want to have anything to do with it. They said, "You've got to move on out of here." The clan was sort of growing. There maybe were 15 or 20, maybe 30 of us at that point. So we went on up, I think, to maybe 21 or 22nd Street, something like that, and set all up again. And the little clan followed me up there, and we started surfing there. And one day we were all there on the beach, and this older gentleman came down the beach, kind of a rough-hewn character, and he said, which one of you characters is Spyder Wright?" And I said, "Oh God, this is somebody from the town. He's going to throw us off again." And I said sheepishly, "I am," And he said, come on with me." And he had this old pickup truck. And we got in the truck and we started up the coast highway. And at that point, I knew he wasn't somebody from the town. And he said, "My name is Jim Kane, Spyder." And he said, "I own some property up at the north end of town here." And he said, "I understand that, the town and the property owners down here have been giving you a hard time with your little surfing that you're trying to get started here." And he said, "I'm all for it." And he said, I'm gonna set you up here at this property that I own." And he said, "If anybody says anything to you about it," he said, "you tell them to call me and come see me about it." And he said, "Don't you worry." He said, "Everything's going to be fine." Well, at that point, he owned this was after, I guess, the storm of '62. And at that point, he had bought all the property from 94th Street all the way to the carousel. He owned all that property. And he sort of set me up right in the center of the property there, and he had a big sign built for me and everything, and he never charged me a nickel. And of course, that's how the surfing beach became. The first summer that I rented surfboards there was nobody else doing it. The second summer, Bill and George Pittman saw, what was going, and they acquired an old school bus and filled it up with surfboards, and that became my first competitor, really. At that point, I had opened a shop down on 15th Street, and of course started selling the Weber boards, my own boards, and that's when my business started. And after a couple years, I guess there were probably, I'd say the first couple years, maybe 100 surfers there at the most. By the year 1966, I think that's probably when it really caught on there. And of course, the Eastern Surfer opened up, and then Sunshine House opened up, and a couple other shops, and it was a happening scene at that point. And I had gone to the town at the time. Being a young businessman, I figured maybe I should, join the Junior Chamber of Commerce or something, do something, get connected with the town, and get on their good side. Because at that point, the town really still was not hip on surfing, and wasn't keen on it, I should say, not hip. And so I went to the town and I told them that I would like to establish a surfing contest, and in coordination with the Junior Chamber of Commerce, and we'll donate all the proceeds to some sort of benefit, whether it be a children's foundation or what have you. I said, well, all the proceeds from the contest, we'll make a donation to them. So the town finally took heed and took hold of surfing and sort of backed us, and that's when we started the Mid-Atlantic Surfing Championships. And I had some friends down in Florida, Dick Catree and a couple other guys that had really good surfers, and got them to come up with their team, and which really sort of put Ocean City on the map as far as, being a good surfing spot, and having these really good surfers such as Claudia Codgins and Mike Tabling and Gary Proper and all those guys that were surfing for Dick come to Ocean City and sort of put it on the map. When I was surfing for Dewey Weber, and of course he hired or acquired Nat Young as his main protege to promote his boards. I first met Nat at the World Contest in Puerto Rico. I mean, he was promoting the Weber ski at that point. It was in the 7-foot range, and of course that was a huge drop from what we'd been used to riding, the 9-foot Weber Performers. And so that was in the late 60s when that really started to happen. I give a lot of credit to Dewey Weber and Nat Young for really instigating the shortboard revolution. 1978 was my last summer in Ocean City, and it was getting really crowded, and kind of had taken away the little small town, beach town effect that I'd always cherished about Ocean City, and it was just getting to be too much. And I'll never forget, because I had watched this movie called The Russians Are Coming, and it was filmed on an island somewhere off of Cape Cod or somewhere up in New England. And at one point in the movie, they showed a little clip and you could see in the background where there were waves breaking. And so I thought, I'm going to go up there and check this place out, or at least try and find this place. I went to Martha's Vineyard first, and I knew that wasn't it. And then I went out to Nantucket, and sure enough, that was the spot. And I just fell in love with it. And the day that I arrived there, I looked around, saw that they had good surf, and it was a really charming little sort of antique village. Not sort of, very much, lots of antique buildings, and actually pre-turn of the century buildings, and they were very conservative about the way things were going to grow there, and I said, this is for me, at least in the summertime. And so we ended up staying there. We went up there on our sailboat the first 2 years, lived on our sailboat in the harbor, and then eventually got a house there and opened a shop there in the summertime, and then started coming down to Florida on a full-time basis in the wintertime.